willows, birches, tulip trees, pines, eastern red cedars, basswoods, asters, and goldenrods. Next. The natural range defines all native plants. Almost all of our vegetables are not native to the United States. They come from Central and South America or other areas of the world. Confession, I was curious, so I looked it up. When saying a plant is native, we refer to its geographic location. The native plants of our region are the same as the region north of us in Pennsylvania. The geography, soil, and climate are the same. Boundaries such as the Mason-Dixon line do not stop the growth of our natives. Native plants occur naturally, have a specific ecoregion and habitat, over the course of evolutionary time, adapt to physical conditions in the region, and co-evolved harmoniously with other species in the system. Next, there are two caveats to native plants. They are rarely invasive and may have cultivars that change their characteristics to meet what we want to see in our gardens or yards. A cultivar uses hybridization to make a plant sterile or to provide variations in colors, size, or leaf patterns. The question among gardeners and horticulturists is whether a cultivar is still a native. The word nativar, N-A-T-I-V-A-R, is being used to denote specific breeding patterns within our native plant community. Next. An example of a cultivar is the pollenless sunflower. It originated as a mutation, and hybridization has continued to maintain this genetic trait.
Sorry to interrupt, Mary Jo. Dawn, we can't see the slides. We're stuck on the last slide, number 35.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let's see.
Sorry, Mary Jo.
You're fine.
No, I'm glad you told me that. That's good.
Other people have the same problem.
Okay. All right. Can you see it now, Mark?
No, it looks like it's an expanded version of something, but it doesn't show any of the slides on my computer. There we go. I see a slide. The sunflower's up now.
You see the sunflowers?
Yes.
And that is correct. Okay.
All right.
I'll start with the sunflower. The sunflower is an example of a mutation. Hybridization has enabled it to maintain the genetic trait of no pollen, well, limited pollen. Since the plant is sterile, the seeds do not mature into seed heads that feed the birds and small mammals and us. There is nectar present in the flowers, so bees can receive some benefit. For the wildlife, please plant the native for the beneficial seed heads. Next. Native plants are better adapted. They require less water after establishment, require little to no fertilizer, are more resistant to pests. This excludes the native pests that all of us have read about. These may be major problems, may be the only nectar or food source or host for a specific animal during its life cycle. Assist various animals by providing food sources and shelter from January to December. This past spring, during the mid-April snow, birds ate the seeds and berries off the plants in my front yard. Yes, I was late in cutting and pruning, but my procrastination was much appreciated by the birds. Pollination is the act of transferring pollen grains from the male anther in the stamen of a flower to the female stigma. The goal of every living organism is to create offspring for future generations. The plants, seeds, or berries contain that information. Species can interbreed freely with one another, but not with different species. These species variations are affected by geography, reproductive methods, and other potential barriers. Next. A pollinator is anything that helps carry pollen again from the male to the female parts of the plant. This is essential for fertilization. Some plants in our landscape do not provide the nutrition the pollinators need. An excellent example of this is the butterfly bush. These plants do not provide a good source of high-fat, nutrient-rich fruit for the animals. Especially impacted are the honeybees and butterflies. This species also competes with native plants for all pollinators, potentially reducing seed set of the native plants. Non-native species may also limit the ability for foraging. Nectar is the liquid produced by plants. The sweetness is the attraction for the hummingbirds, bats, moths, flies, beetles, wasps, bees, and other mammals, even us. I don't know how many of you remember, but I remember and still have caught myself sipping the nectar from the honeysuckle plants. Nectar is more than sweet. It is rich in vitamins, salts, oils, and other nutrients, providing an excellent source of energy and calories. Next. It is not uncommon for specific plants to benefit specific pollinators. The best example is the monarch's need for milkweed plants. They do pollinate the plant. However, the primary use for the species is as a host plant. The common and swamp milkweed plants are the two primary uses for the monarchs. The black swallowtail also uses the milkweed as well as dill. The last is not native. However, it is a larval host and essential for dill pickles. Non-native plants can be beneficial. Dawn, could you quickly advance to the next slide just to show the monarch? Nope, I'm sorry. I'm the one that's off. Okay. This is the white pine, which denotes wind acting as a pollinator. Pollen carried by the wind is light and fluffy so that it can be easily transported. Birch trees and some of our important crops like corn, rice, and wheat are all wind pollinated. Flowers on these plants don't need petals, nectar, or scent, as do flowers that attract bees and butterflies. The white pine, a conifer, uses wind for pollination. In the spring, we can see the pollen being blown in the wind. Characteristics of wind-pollinated plants are no bright colors, no specific odor or fragrance, no nectar, small in size. An example highlighting allergy issues is found in goldenrod and ragweed. Hiding under the insect-pollinated goldenrod is the very inconspicuous brown ragweed. Ragweed is wind-pollinated, therefore the pollen floats on the wind. Is it possible to be allergic to goldenrod? Yes, however, it's very unlikely. One Christmas, my mother had one last present for me. She brought it in from the side porch, let me look at it, and immediately removed it. It was ragweed, which I had not known how to identify, and to which I am very allergic. Next, why the emphasis on caterpillars? They are the food birds use to feed their young. It is estimated that 90% of the caterpillar species are used by adult birds for this reason. Hopefully there are remaining caterpillars that mature into butterflies and moths. Just a reminder, caterpillars range from the good, the bad, and the ugly. Using the right native species will increase the presence of the beneficial butterflies and their caterpillars. Some butterflies and moths we will see are monarchs, black swallowtails, tiger swallowtails, all which I have seen in my yard, skippers, sulfurs, fritillaries, Baltimore checker spots, our Maryland state butterfly, Luna moths, and sphinx moths. Using Latin names provide the specific for each individual plant. This information enables us to use plants within the same family, but have various colors, sizes, and/or shapes. Another reason to use the Latin name is to know the native from the non-native. Some example of invasive plants include Japanese knotweed, barberry, which is favorite habitat for ticks, Japanese stiltgrass, and more. This also holds true for the insect world as well. The native insects live in a balanced ecosystem. Next, please. It is wise to carefully check the Latin name of the plant for the native. Beware, the nursery and box stores seem to lack in this area of identification. Their labeling of plants may be incorrect. Knowing the name of a plant can prevent us from buying an invasive species. A good example is the honeysuckle. The native honeysuckle is Lonicera sempervirens. I know, it's hard to say, but we learn quickly. While the invasive Japanese honeysuckle is Lonicera japonica. Carefully check your preferred plant. Native plants may not fit a formal or geometric garden. They tend to be more free-form and complementary of each other. Observe your space, track the sun, wind, moisture, and drainage. Be aware of the soil type and pH. Many a time we select our perfect plant only to watch it struggle. Always do some research into the plant or plants you wish to put into your landscape. Remember, native plants have the advantage, requiring less water. Also, fertilizer, insecticides, and pesticides may not be necessary. There will always be some maintenance to keep the garden free of weeds and pests. But the beauty of watching our plants thrive and bring the wildlife to us is calming. Native plants give us a win-win. Suggested plants for our region include the keystone oak, willow, birches, tulip tree, maples, basswood, eastern red cedar, pine. Shrubs and small berries will include winterberry, viburnums, native hydrangea, ninebark, rhododendron, dogwood, redbuds. Vines are crossvine, Virginia creeper, native honeysuckle. If you want ground cover, look at bunchberry, Allegheny spurge, partridgeberry. For hummingbirds, bee balm, I've discovered especially the very red Jacob Klein is a magnet. Lobelia, both the red cardinal flower and the blue, native columbine, false indigo, phlox, larkspur. For butterflies, look at coneflowers, especially the purple. Milkweed for both nectar and host, goldenrod, beard's tongue, phlox, coreopsis, and asters. Thank you.
Mark, I believe you are next in our lineup of presenters.
Okay, thank you. Hey, I'll be perfectly honest. And thank you, Dawn, for telling them about my vast experience. But I really, when I got into this, knew absolutely nothing about native plants. I'll admit it. Everyone here probably knows more about them than I do. But I looked at this as a challenge. I mean, why should I use native plants in my garden or in my landscape? You can go on the internet, you can Google why use native plants, and lists like this one you see in front of you pops up. This is from the University of Maryland Extension. They were the group that trained master gardeners. But you know what? I wanted to learn more about it. I wanted to dig deeper. Why are these particular plants important versus other ones that aren't important? One of the things that I learned, and actually it's a really cool story. And it's one of the things that really motivates me to do more, plant more native plants in my yard. It's that these plants support songbirds. They provide food for songbirds. MaryJo mentioned caterpillars. I'm going to show you in just a moment, the differences between native plants, the number of species of caterpillars that they support. It's incredible. Our native plants will support, I'll show you in a minute. I'm just talking too much right now. But anyway, they support hundreds versus a plant that's not native, for example, the ginkgo tree. It'll support maybe 2 or 3 caterpillars or different types of species. Very, very few compared to our native plants. So I thought that that was really important. It's a cool story, and I'm going to tell you about it. And this last item on my list, I'm not sure what that means anymore. I don't know why it's there, but the last item on my list that really convinced me that we have to plant plants to support our native pollinators is because of the food that we eat. You'll see in just a moment that it's really important to have these pollinators if you guys want to eat and drink. Particularly, I'll talk about food, but there's also the people like tequila, or bats are having a really hard time surviving. They're the only species that pollinate the agave. I was just out in Texas, the agave plant. We've got to protect our pollinators for the food we eat and the things that we drink. So next slide, please. So this isn't my work. I work on atmospheric mercury and other things, but this really struck me. Professor Talamay, Doug Talamay at University of Delaware has done research on birds, songbirds. He looks at the food that they eat, and he's done a number of different studies, and he can explain this better than I can, but it's an incredible story to tell you how important it is to have caterpillars, okay? Everyone knows what this bird is. If you don't, it's a black-capped chickadee. You've seen it in your backyard. You've heard it. There's the mnemonics of the bird. I'll embarrass myself if I say it, but that's the sound that it makes, so you can hear it. It's a really small bird. It weighs like 12 grams. You know what that means? You know what 12 grams is? That's a very small amount. You have 3 times more sugar in a 12-ounce Coke than this bird weighs, okay? This bird will have 6 to 8 eggs, okay? Now the parents, this is astonishing. This is from their research. They actually monitored, the graduate students at the University of Delaware monitored the amount of caterpillars that they ate in a day. I mean, you think these birds would be huge. They eat 350 to 570 caterpillars per day. And it takes 16 to 18 days to get these caterpillars, to get these birds so that they can fly and get their own food. So you do the multiplication. You can do it as well as I can. So to bring 1 clutch of eggs to the point where they can go out and collect their own food, they have to eat between 6,000 and 9,000 caterpillars. It's just awesome. I could not believe it when I saw this, when I heard him say this. It's incredible. So where are they going to get these caterpillars? Okay, we got to have a source for caterpillars for this bird and all the other birds that are around us. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, so what they did was they went and looked at 20 woody plants. These are there's 5 of them listed here. They also looked at 20 perennials, and these are native woody plants, okay? And these are native perennials to our region, the Mid-Atlantic region. They're out of Delaware. So they went to the literature and they looked at the number of Lepidoptera. Those are moths and butterflies. And as a matter of fact, I think he said something like, for every 1 butterfly you have like 19 moths. And moths are really important pollinators. They do a better job pollinating than your butterflies. So if you see moths out there, don't kill them, leave them alone. Okay, so look at the oak tree. 1 oak tree, based on their research, will support, well, they've seen 534 different species of butterflies and moths consuming that tree. The tree, obviously, I don't have to go through this, but the tree is a source of energy. It takes in sunlight, CO2. It provides the carbon source for these caterpillars. So, these are the top 5 on the list. You can see all the different species of butterflies and moths that they can support. It's huge, and it has to be huge. And these plants developed, over time in our region. The insects developed with them. So there's this nice symbiotic relationship between them, and there's many of them. And we need to maintain this community of plants in order to have the caterpillars that we need to feed the songbirds. So that's what I learned about this particular aspect of native plants. And I thought this was really cool, and it's due to Doug Talamay. Next slide, please. And the second thing that I thought was pretty cool too, this is some data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They claim that there are 100 crops that are grown in the US that depend upon pollination. All right. And this converts to, depending on what your diet is, about a third of the food that we eat exists because of pollination from bees, from moths, butterflies, birds, beetles, bats. There's probably other pollinators out there. There are approximately 3,500 species of native bees that help increase crop yields. And we've all heard this, we've seen it in the popular press, that the population of these bees has been decreasing over time. And there's a guy here that does research. He sent me over a paper this morning, which I'll show you in the next, I'll show you a couple figures of it in the next graph, which shows that the bee population, some of the bee populations have decreased. The native bee populations have decreased over the last 10 to 20 years. Can I have the next slide, Dawn? So these are data from that particular study. It was a global study in the United States. You can see N is the number of individuals that they measured. Bombus is B here. These are basically different regions of the US, West, East, Pacific West, and East Coast. So the East Coast, global East includes us. Coastal East includes us as well. If the gray colored bar is smaller than the black colored bar, such as in this example right here, Bombus, this is the one from Pennsylvania. You can see that there has been a decrease in the population. They went back to like as far back in history as they could go. They looked at these particular bumblebees. There was like a dozen of them that they looked at. And some increased, some did decrease. On the other side here, this is a non-native bee. These are honeybees. And these honeybees have decreased a good bit too. You can see, if I can minimize my little thing on the side here, you can see that from these surveys that they do every year, these are the honeybees that the commercial growers use when they go out to pollinate an area. So they have their honeybees, they bring them out into the field, they let them loose, the honeybees come back. And so they do a survey and they figure out, how the population's changed over time. And it's been pretty consistent. If you just look at the annual numbers, we're losing about 40% of the commercial honeybees, which are used to pollinate the food that we eat, a third of the food that we eat. So what I would propose is find plants that attract honeybees, that are good for honeybees, and native bees. I shouldn't have said honeybees. I meant to say native bees and honeybees. Okay, so there's a list of native plants in my next slide, which are just the greatest things you can possibly plant. I shouldn't say that, but they're really important. They'll attract a lot of bees. MaryJo mentioned some of these. This is a list you can take with you. I think there is another slide somewhere which has all 20 of the woody species and the number of lepidopteran that they support. For example, number 20 on the woody plants will support 125 versus number 1, which was 534 lepidopteran. It drops off a good bit on the perennial side. The cardinal flower is number 20. It supports 4, and the goldenrod supports the most. So anyway, those are the two things that really convinced me that I need to do more to plant native plants in my yard. It's a real thing, and it's important to do.
All right, thank you, Mark. Next up is Donna Gates, and she is going to be talking about how to incorporate native plants into your landscape.
Thank you. Thank you. In deciding where to add native plants, one of the easiest strategies is to start by removing any invasive plants in your yard and replacing them with native ones. You have probably seen teasel, seen here in the foreground, and the purple flowers of crown vetch, seen in the background, growing along roadsides. But you may not be aware of the invasives in your own yard, which include burning bush, barberry, and butterfly bush. These can be replaced with native plants such as summer sweet, Virginia sweetspire, New Jersey tea, or a native perennial. Next slide. Lawns are essentially a monoculture, not offering anything in the way of pollen, nectar, or cover for wildlife. You can reduce your lawn area by extending an existing bed or creating a new bed and adding native plants. If you opt to keep your lawn and wish to reduce your carbon footprint, you can seed in a no-mow lawn. These are not native grasses, but are drought tolerant, requiring less watering and less mowing. With a cutting regimen of 2 times per season, you have to realize that the grass will get 6 inches to a foot high. Even at a 6-inch height, the grass blades don't stand up but will lay down. That is a look that may need some acceptance if you go that way. Next slide. Some native plants provide food for us. These are pawpaw fruits, George Washington's favorite. Incorporating food plants into your landscape is called edible landscaping. A pawpaw tree or elderberry shrub could be planted instead of some other ornamental tree or shrub. Many pollinators use the nectar in elderberry flowers, and the berries are used to make jelly. Edible landscaping will give you the excuse to use wild strawberries as the low-growing ground cover at the front of a bed. Ramps, raspberries, and blueberries are some other native plants that can be incorporated. Next slide. Check the growing conditions of your area for the amount of sun it receives. Get an idea of the moisture in the soil. Does it tend to be soggy or unusually dry? You should match these site conditions to the growing requirements of the plants you intend to put there. Collect a soil sample and submit it for a soil test to have accurate information on your area. The dry shade under a large tree can be tough to deal with. Try planting white woodland aster, partridgeberry, or Pennsylvania sedge for this type of site. Next slide. For plantings next to your house or along a fence, plan your design so that all plants are at the back of the bed and short ones in front. Island beds can have tall plants off to one side or in the center, with shorter plants filling in. Use the color of flowers and the various textures of plant leaves to create your outdoor picture. 3 to 5 perennials grouped together make a better design statement and a better attractant to pollinators than a single plant. Of course, a single shrub or tree will make a bold statement on its own. You may find cultivars of native shrubs at garden centers. Diablo 9-bark has red or maroon foliage, while black lace elderberry has almost black foliage. Tiger's eye sumac has yellow rather than the usual green leaves. And there are yellow-tipped varieties of arborvitae and junipers. These native plants may add that splash of color you would like to see in your landscape, but they may not attract some of the wildlife that the straight species would, simply because the insects won't recognize them. Some cultivars also provide less nutrition than the original species. Next slide. A goal to strive for in your landscape is for season-long color, which will provide a continuous supply of nectar for pollinators. Any seeds or berries that are produced will provide food for birds. A single planting bed can provide season-long interest, or several beds can each take their turn as a featured player through the year. Here, the white flowers of Juneberry appear in spring, along with wild columbine and golden Alexander. Next slide. In summer, black-eyed Susan, purple coneflower, and foxglove beardtongue bloom. I have found that golden ragwort, and mountain mint are some of the fastest growing native perennials. Next slide. As fall approaches, asters come into bloom and join some of the native plants that began blooming in late summer and continue into fall. Next slide. Although much appreciated when in bloom, some native plants require a word of caution. The spines on the prickly pear cacti in my garden make weeding around them a bit of a challenge. As well, you need to be aware of the spines on rattlesnake master. Next slide. Make your landscape a habitat that supports native wildlife in more than one life stage. Plants can provide food when not in bloom. Here, a monarch caterpillar feeds on milkweed. Pawpaw is the host plant for the zebra swallowtail butterfly. If you plant an elderberry and do not collect the berries for jelly, birds will help themselves. Our neighborhood gray catbird can't wait for our blueberries to ripen. Native trees and shrubs also provide valuable nesting sites and cover for birds. Next slide. When doing your fall cleanup, remove any stems and leaves of diseased plants, but stems of Joe Pye weed, wild bergamot, mountain mint, and swamp milkweed produce hollow or pithy stems, which are suitable for native bees to lay their eggs in. At the end of the growing season, when cutting these stems back, I leave stubs that are between 6 to 18 inches tall for bees to use. Leave the leaves on as many beds as possible. After most of the leaves have fallen off the trees in our yard, we don't rake them up, but instead use the lawnmower to shred them while cutting the grass for the last time. This becomes the natural mulch that we place on our beds, as seen here. Some butterflies and moths need leaves as a place to spend the winter. The viceroy butterfly caterpillar will roll up in a leaf and drop to the ground into some leaves to spend the winter. Woolly bear and great spangled fritillary caterpillars will hibernate in leaves. Luna moths will hibernate as cocoons in leaves. Next slide. Your winter landscape can include native plants that provide seeds for birds. Seed heads on St. John's wort, seen here, river oats and other grasses, purple coneflower, and wild bergamot stems can be left for our feathered friends. You can incorporate native plants in a meadow-type area or keep to a stylized garden design by simply using native plants where non-native ones might have been planted. Remember, adding native plants and creating new planting beds doesn't have to be done all at once. It can be done in phases as time and money allow. For help in aiding in identifying plants, you can use Newcomb's Flower Guide, written by Lawrence Newcomb, which I enjoy using. You can also take a photo and send it to the University of Maryland Home and Garden Information Center. And lastly, I have the app called Picture This on my iPad that has come in handy a few times. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Donna. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, MaryJo. We can go ahead and get some questions going. So if anyone would like to ask a question, please do so. I know we had some questions that were submitted in the registration forms that you filled out. So hopefully we have answered those questions through the presentation. If you have another question, please feel free to ask, or you can also put it in the chat, and then one of our presenters will be able to answer that for you.
If you get on the University of Maryland Extension website and just in the question box, put down soil sample, it will tell you how to collect the soil sample and where the labs are that will analyze them. So that's the place to look. It's the HGIC, Home and Garden Information Center, University of Maryland.
All right, thank you, Donna. So someone had asked where you should submit soil samples for analysis. So thank you. There's also a question. It says that they are new to Maryland, and where is a good place to buy trees?
I believe the Wood Thrush Native Plant Nursery in Floyd, Virginia might be a place.
And Donna, I believe that they are going to be at the native plant sale that's held at New Germany.
Yes, I believe so.
In May.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the date is May 13. Also, I understand Evergreen will be there, and I believe Evergreen does have at least the pawpaw tree.
That is correct. We do have the pawpaw tree available.
And also the oh, a Calacanthus, I can't think, California allspice shrub. I recall seeing those two.
Yes, we have the Calacanthus. And another place to order native trees that I've found to be like very good is Mid-Atlantic Natives. They are in Eastern PA.
And that was Mid-Atlantic native?
Yes, Mid-Atlantic native nursery or plant nursery.
you.
Something, just Google Mid-Atlantic plant nursery and it'll pop up.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Sam. That was Samantha, who is part of our Evergreen team. And she is the director of our agricultural and nursery. So she is very knowledgeable and obviously knows exactly what we can offer and what some of our partners around the area can offer as well. Someone else asked if the native plant pre-order sale is still going on, and yes, it is. I have a slide that I'll show you as well, that you can go on our website and pre-order plants. We will be at the May 13th event at New Germany. And the next weekend, we have an open house where you can pick up your pre-ordered plants there as well. So let's see what other questions we have. We have another one. Liz McDowell had joined us. And Liz is the president of the Maryland Native Plant Society. So thank you for joining us, Liz. She stated that wood thrush doesn't have many woody plants, but Friends of New Germany State Park will have a variety of native trees and shrubs available during that event. So that'll be a great place to find a lot of different kind of natives available in our area. All right. I believe that is all the questions we've had so far. I don't see any more in the chat there. And then I do have a couple more things that I just want to wrap up with. MaryJo has offered that if anyone would be interested, you can put your email in the chat, or you can email MaryJo directly at mprice@frostburg.edu, and she will send you her session notes. Also, following the event tonight, I will be sending out a chart that Donna had put together that shows the conditions that are favorable for the various plants that Evergreen does have for sale. So I will be emailing that to everyone as well. And then someone had a question about our pre-order sale. So I just want to show you a couple of slides from our website. It has some great information on there. It tells you if it's native to our area and what kind of sun it needs, soil, how tall it grows, if it's a perennial, an annual, and then it gives you a little bit of information about the plant as well. So it's a really great website that Sam has put together for us. So I think it'll be helpful for everyone looking at that. So this is just two of those slides of the plants that we offer, just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So you can go to our website under sale, and you will find our native plant sale where you can place those orders. So I just want to thank everyone. Really great to have you here. And we want to thank our presenters, MaryJo Price, Mark Castro, Donna Gates. Thank you to all of you as well. And again, I will be sending out a follow-up email, and I'll give you some of the things we discussed here this evening. Thank you, everyone. Glad we could be here and we hope to do this again.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
could participate and have this session tonight.
Thank you.